Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the YMCA of Delaware's Community Learning Conversation for Native American Heritage Month. My name is Tim Rushton, and I'm the Executive Director of the Dover YMCA. I use he, him pronouns, and it's a great pleasure to join you this morning as I will be moderating this call today, and it is a great honor for me to have been asked to be a moderator. Some housekeeping items before we begin. Please note that this webinar will be recorded and closed caption will be enabled in this event. If you desire, you can turn on closed caption on your end. Also, we ask that you please be present for this learning call, as we're all tempted to multitask these days and trying to clean out, for example, inboxes while listening to the call. We ask that you be here and be present so we could all learn and grow from this experience together. November is Native American Heritage Month. The month is a time to celebrate rich and diverse cultures, traditions, and histories, and to acknowledge the important contributions of Native people. We're having this conversation to learn more about our local tribes, to raise general awareness about the unique challenges Native people have faced, both historically and in the present, and the way in which tribal citizens have worked to conquer these challenges. The ultimate goal, however, is to foster a greater sense of belonging, including people with Indigenous heritage. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge our land. We are all situated on sacred land. Today, I join you from the unceded lands of the Lenni, Lenape, and Nanticoke people who belong to this land and acknowledge their care of these lands over time. At the Y, we aim to create a space to learn with passion, to listen with intent, and to understand the depth and wisdom within our communities across the state of Delaware. Community Conversation celebrates the diversity and richness of what unites us as a people. Now I'd like to share a short video from YMCA of Delaware to celebrate Native American Heritage Month.
I know that the Y, no matter which community it's in, it's always a staple in that community as a place for everybody to come and to use. And I know this particular location, thanks to Kyle and Lynn, my cousins, that they've really embraced their ability to share their heritage here in this space. It gives people a chance to ask questions and to realize that there are Native people who are part of this Y community, and so that helps, our Y family to learn more about Native American culture and their Native American neighbors. No one realizes that we're still here, but we are. We are members of the Nanticoke Indian community, of the Lenape Indian community, and many people have never even heard of these words. Yet this whole area was Lenapehoking. That's that word you see on my shirt here, and it means land of the Lenape. And so I think it's really important for people to know what land they are on, and that the original inhabitants of this land are still very much here. They're your neighbors. They are part of your community. There are just so many other stereotypes that exist, and I think one of the ways to really combat that is for people to learn about Native Americans, learn that there are so many different tribal communities. Each one has their own history, their own language, their own name. We are still here, our communities are strong, we have futures, we have our culture, we have our languages. We're working to revitalize much of that, and we are continuing to work to preserve our culture and preserve it for the next 7 generations. We want everyone to know that we are still here. We have been here this whole time, and we will be here tomorrow.
Okay, at this time, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce to you our panelists for this learning call. First, I'd like to introduce Nina Todd. She is from the Delaware Division of Historical and Cultural Affairs. Kyle Salmons from the Dover YMCA. He's our Dover YMCA office manager and one of my team members at Dover. Corel Hall, community member. And Charlene Lyons, the president and CEO of YMCA of the Treasure Coast, and the first Native person to serve in this role. Congratulations, Charlene. Okay, this time I'm going to turn to the panelists And again, I'm going to have them share with our audience a number of things: your name, your tribe or your heritage, pronouns that you use, your current place of employment, and how long you've been affiliated with the YMCA. Nina, why don't we begin with you?
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nina Todd, and I am the Historic Site Supervisor for the Delaware Division of Historical and Cultural Affairs. I oversee the daily operations of the Old State House Museum. I am originally from Kansas. I belong to the people south of Atchison. I belong to the Kanza, the Oskaloosa, the Tonganoxie, the Sauk and the Fox, and the Iowa. So I am related to many, many people in Kansas. Many of the communities that were there historically, generally known as the Plains tribes, and I am related to most all of them. My pronouns are she and her. And I have been working in cultural resource management for the Division of Historical and Cultural Affairs for over 33 years. I started when I was 9. So thank you all for coming. Back to you, Tim.
Thank you very much. The age of 9 is an early age to start working, so congratulations. Okay, Kyle, how about you? Please share your story with the audience.
I'm Kyle Salmons, pronouns he, him. I'm the office manager here at the Dover YMCA. I am of the Lenni Lenape Nanticoke tribe, and yeah, it is what it is.
Thank you, Kyle.
You're welcome.
Corel, would you please share your story with the audience?
Hello, my name is Corel Hall. My pronouns are she, her. I am a member of the Nanticoke tribe. Currently, I am a graduate student at Rutgers University studying Nanticoke and Lenape identity and sovereignty and language revitalization. Very glad to be here today.
Yeah, congratulations on your doctorate, and we wish you luck in your pursuit. And Charlene, please share your story with the audience.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charlene Lyons. I am the president and CEO for the YMCA of the Treasure Coast in Southeast Florida, and I am a member of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina in Robeson County. And I've been with the YMCA for 20 years, and my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you, Charlene. Okay, we have a number of questions, ladies and gentlemen, for the panelists today. We're going to get in depth into their stories and really work to help all of us understand better their heritage, and also to be much more welcoming as a community to the Native American people. So with that being said, I'm going to again go to each panelist, and I have a combined question for the panelists. Again, tell us a bit of your story, how you identify, share some of the challenges and joys of your upbringing, and also round out those questions with what do you wish people in the community to know about your culture or heritage? For example, what are you most proud of? What do you want people to know of? And this time I'll start with Corel.
All right, so I would say one of the challenges that I had growing up is that I did not grow up geographically close to my family. So I actually was raised in Cleveland, Ohio. And so that being far from both sides of my family. And so I didn't have the opportunity to meet many of my cousins and to spend time with them and grow up in the same way they did, with your cousins down the street and being able to just go to the tribal center. And so, you know, I felt very isolated. And also when the city I was growing up in, it's a place where Native Americans are not very visible. And so it was always something that I tended to keep to myself a little bit. I did not share so much about my heritage except with my close friends because, you know, when you're a kid, you want to blend in with everyone else. You don't want to stand out and be different. And so, but I am really happy now that I do live closer to a lot of my family members and my tribal community, that I have that opportunity now to participate in some of the daily activities and be able to dance at our powwows. And I really want people to know that, you know, we are still here. And even though we have faced so many hundreds of years of colonization, we still have so much of our culture left, and we have so much that we can pass on to the next generations.
Carol, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about your culture?
So I have been told, especially when I started working, that Native Americans don't exist. So I was told this when I was a student at school, when I was in the workforce as an adult, that Native Americans, they're a fiction of the past, or there's a couple left, but they're scattered on some reservations out west. And so the idea that people around us don't know that there are, in fact, many different Native Americans that still exist. They exist all over the country, in the East and in the West and everywhere in between. And that there are so many different tribes, and each one has their own unique individual cultures, histories, and languages.
So the diversity of your culture is something that most people just really can't wrap their head around.
Yes, most people, they get their ideas from Hollywood. And so they think about, some pieces of Plains Indian culture, right? So you have the teepees and the buffalo and the horses and the headdresses. And all of those things are, and the way that they're represented in Hollywood is a very sort of dramatized and romanticized idea of what actual Native people and their cultures are like. Our culture out here in the East has none of those elements. We are people of the Tidewater. We didn't ride horses. We have canoes and that we took up the riverways. We hunt and fish and we garden, and our traditional homes are called wigwams. They are made of wood and bark, and they are permanent homes. We did not, travel in the same way. We weren't a nomadic people. And you have many different, everywhere you go all across Turtle Island, each one of those communities, they have their own languages, their own ways of speaking, their own agricultural practices or hunting practices. So there's so much diversity.
Thank you very much. Kyle, please share with the audience a bit of your upbringing and what, much like Carell, what you wish people in the community to know about your culture or heritage.
I wish that they would ask more questions. I wish that they would sit and listen. But like Carell mentioned, she grew up in the Cleveland, Ohio. I grew up here in Delaware. All of my family was here. So I had that upbringing where I could say, hey, can I come over to your house? And it's a 5-minute drive. It's not like Carell where she had nobody. So the upbringing on my end, I had when I was growing up, no cultural thing. But in the, what am I looking for?
Perhaps challenges growing up?
I've had none because of growing up so close with my family. So I had no one.
So having family around you, Kyle, really was you had a support network that whereas Carell was, I don't want to put words in Carell's mouth, but a bit more isolating. Whereas you had the family support system there, which probably it sounds like it made a big difference for you.
It did. It did.
Okay. And again, as you alluded to, you welcome questions from people about your culture?
I do.
And you wish people would ask more. So what you want the community watching to understand is it's okay to ask.
Yeah, it's okay to ask. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
Charlene,
welcome.
would you please share with the audience your experiences and again, like everyone else, what do you want most people in the community to know about your culture or heritage?
Okay, so my upbringing is probably similar to Corel. I'm an urban native. I was raised separate from my people. My mother was separated from the Lumbee tribe when she was 9 when her mother died. So she ended up with her stepfather, who was in the Marine Corps, who drug her all over the United States. And then she met my father, who is white, and I was raised primarily in California and Hawaii. So I've been separated, from my people. And I think the challenge for me in being a Native person is that because my skin is darker than everybody else's, everybody wants it. Well, what are you? Is kind of the question. Well, and depending on where I am in the United States, people just make assumptions. If I'm in California, then I'm Mexican. If I'm in Hawaii, then I'm, Samoan or Polynesian or Hawaiian or something like that. So nobody ever really, they could tell that I was something, but they didn't know. And so that's kind of a weird question to get on a regular basis. So what I want people to know is that there are 574 federally recognized tribes in the continental United States, and there are 400 not unrecognized tribes in the United States. So if you add that together, there's more than almost 1,000 separate tribes, to Corel's point, that have separate rituals and languages and practices. So I think that is important for people to know that we are still here.
Do you find that oftentimes people tend to paint your culture with a broad brush here, and they all should fit into a certain kind of mold?
Right. We all live in teepees. We all wear headdresses, and we say how.
Understood. Thank you.
Mhm.
And Nina.
Well, as I said, I was born in Kansas, as hundreds of generations before me were. And but when I was about 8 years old, my mother and father broke with tradition. My father left our community. He took a job out here in the East Coast that brought us to Delaware. My mom left and went with him and brought my brother and I. So we were pretty much just like Charlene and Corel, where we grew up away from our community. However, our parents made sure it was imperative. They sent us back every year for at least 3 or 4 months to stay with them so that we would still remain connected. And we were out here all alone. The only saving grace that we had was the Lenape community in Cheswell. I went to school with most of those kids, and they sort of, took me in, and they were very generous in their, acceptance. That was pretty much the only thing that was a saving grace for me. And I am still grateful to the Lenape and Nanticoke communities today for that nurturing that I had while I was out here and away from my people. And I try to pay them back all the time, because I work with them and try and do programming and any of the things that they want to do. I try to give them a vehicle in order to do that. What do I want people in the community to know? First, I think I want people to know that Native people have a very long and rich and diverse history that is measured in millenniums. It's not even measured in centuries. It's measured in millenniums. The other thing that I would like for people to know and understand about Native people, and that is, yes, even though we did have a lot of diversity, but we also had a lot of commonalities all across North America as well, including trade, because we traded all from one coast to the other and everywhere in between. There was a lot of trade. There was a lot of interaction between different groups. We were not strangers to one another. We knew, and we had a very, very extensive trade network. And coming from Kansas, which was sort of the center of all of that trade. People came from the east, people came from the west, they came from the south, they came from the north to trade, and all of those goods got traded and they were dispersed all over the country. But I really want to talk about land and what land means to Native people, and that is pretty common across the board. And when I say land, I don't mean land in the colonial sense, where it is defined as, dirt and rocks and real estate. I think to the Native people, land is defined as dirt, and rocks, and water, and sky, and plants, and animals, and all the living things that touch upon it. That is what land is. And that is what was taken away from us. All life. A life that we belong to. And that was devastating for many, many people. And because of the fact that it's not simply defined as real estate and, oh, you can move someplace else, well, that was very difficult because land is an intricate living part of the culture. So I think that's.
Nina, that's very profound. I know for me, I read an essay from Chief Seattle, and he had said, I think the title of the essay was, "How can you buy and sell the earth?" So the connection of Native Americans to the land, I think most people can't wrap their head around that, because colonists saw it as you cut a parcel of land and you sell it. Well, Chief Seattle said, how could you sell the land? It's part of who we are. So I always found, and thank you for saying that, because I think that's very profound and a huge misconception by most people. Thank you. I'm going to switch gears a bit, folks. And what we're going to talk about now is a situation that made you perhaps not feel welcome or uncomfortable. As a public educator for many years with students and staff, I always worked under the premise that people might forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So I'm going to move into that vein and ask you, please share an experience, situation where you didn't feel welcome because of your culture. I think it's important that our audience understands that, so they could find themselves hopefully not in that situation or putting someone in that situation. So Charlene, how about we start with you?
Okay. So because of my mixed heritage, and like I said, people are like, well, what are you? But many times people would assume that I was white. So when I lived in Hawaii as a middle schooler, I went to school, with other military kids, but there were Native kids there too. Native Hawaiians, well, I guess they're Native Americans, but they're Hawaiians. They don't identify as Americans at all, because they were the last Native people that the United States stole their land. So and it's only been in, the 19th, 20th century that happened. So it's really very fresh for them. And so they're still really upset about it. So they identified me as white. And there's a day at school, I don't know if it's made up or, because I'm not from there. So I had moved there, and there was a day at school where it was Haole Day, which in the Hawaiian language means white. And so it was Haole Day. And if you show up at school, they're going to beat you up. So it was the kind of like the first time that I was like, oh, wait, I'm being seen as different, and I'm going to be punished for this being different. So that was really the first time that I personally had experienced anything like that. And I think that growing up in a military kind of environment, there's people from everywhere, all walks of life, all nations, nationalities, creeds, colors, religions. So we kind of just melted together and didn't really, identify people as differently. So that was kind of the first time kind of living in that community that I had been identified as white, and it was bad. So.
A question that comes to mind when we're talking about situations where you feel unwelcome. In the Native American community, with the diversity of all the tribes, are there situations in your culture where between two different tribes there might be a feeling of unwelcome from one to another because of centuries of perhaps issues that have occurred? Does that happen in your community?
So not in my tribe. So the story goes, right? Because we're an oral history kind of a people. The story goes that we made contact, the lost colony of Roanoke, supposedly we made contact with them, and we basically, our tribe assimilated 500 years ago, where out in California, it's only been about 200 years. So there's not a lot of remembering of that sort of thing, but the story goes that there's not a lot of conflict between the Lumbee tribe and other people. And actually during all of the conflict with the colonizers, the Lumbee people, because they are very in North Carolina, they're in the swamp near the coast, like on the Lumber River. So they actually sheltered other tribes that were trying to get away from the colonizers that were trying to wipe them out. So they sheltered other tribes that were moving through the area.
So because of the situation, they were thrust together for survival.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, please share with the audience, if you will, a situation where you just didn't feel welcome. Somebody maybe put you in an awkward situation.
I would have to say I was working at Walgreens back in the day. Guy comes up, prescription wasn't ready, told him yada yada yada. He told me he didn't want to hear it and that I should go back to the country that I came from. When I explained to him that I'm from here, he said, no, go back to the country you're from. I was looking at him with a strange look on my face. Everybody knew I was Native American. Then when he said it again, that's when I said, sir, I'm from here. I'm Native American. His whole attitude changed. It was, oh this, oh that, oh this, oh that. But it's like, that should never come up. But
Did that happen often, Kyle?
I would say that was the only case where it happened.
Okay. Nina, please share a story with the audience in which you had an issue with not feeling welcome or uncomfortable or belonging.
Yes, when I actually started working in the field of cultural resource management, and I was working with archaeologists and other anthropologists, and it was very difficult for me to work with them, or I would say it was difficult for them to work with me because we were still living under that narrative that all Indians had been exterminated. So the extinct Indian idea. So you have someone who's coming into your field of cultural resource management, in which they are interpreting somebody else's history. And in their case, it was American Indian history. And now you have someone who's coming in who is American Indian. We have a problem because their ideologies, anthropologists and archaeologists and Native people have a long history of polar opposite ideologies. Most Native people believe that the artifacts and material culture that is found belong to the people who buried them or they were buried with. But archaeologists in the state believe that those things belong to them. So there's just naturally a conflict of interest there. And when I first started working, when I was asked to take that job at Island Field, which was a Native American cemetery, which was interpreted culturally. Now they had reburied all of the people there, but it was still a Native American cultural site. And I called my grandmother and I said to her, you know, they've asked me to come take this job with, you know, archaeologists, and it's going to be a native site. It was a native burial ground. What do you think I ought to do? And I also told her, I said, I listened to some of their interpretation that they had, and I have to tell you, there are not any Native people that I know that have those characteristics that fit that. I don't know where they came up with these ideas from, but I don't know any people that are like that or even think like that. And my grandmother said, you know, Nina, they don't know. They don't know because they think that we're all gone. But somebody has got to step across that line, and somebody has got to teach them and show them that there is a difference and that there are Native people that are still alive. And she said, and you're not going to, and I think that person should be you, and I think you should take the job. And I did, and that was 33 years ago. And she said, listen to me carefully. They're not going to want to hear from you. They're not going to believe anything that you say. You're not going to be able to reach that whole group and change their mind. What you have to do is you have to find them and reach them one at a time. That's how you're going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to get the whole group. I always remembered that. And I can honestly say this, that in my 33 years of working in cultural resource management, I have made literally hundreds of friends and connections in that field, and all of them one at a time.
So Nina, you and the other panelists, and certainly other Native Americans, will probably spend most of their life, if not the rest of their life, continuing to educate people. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
That won't end. It's going to be probably the rest of your life.
It's, I'm sorry, Tim, and it's difficult because there is a narrative that is out there, a story that is out there that did not come from Native people. And that story is so pervasive that people can't, it's going to be difficult to deconstruct that narrative and tell a more truthful story. But we all have to do it. I mean, it's inevitable that eventually we are going to have to correct the story one at a time, one person at a time.
Understood. Thank you. And Corel.
So my story also comes from my mixed race heritage. And so I have constantly been told that I am not allowed to be both Black and Native American, which is a very strange statement when you say it out loud. And yet you're dealing with these different stereotypes about what a Native person should be or what a Black person should be or is. And so you have this idea that if you are you can only be Native American if you are only Native American, and that any form, and if you come from a mixed race heritage, then that somehow diminishes your nativeness. Where then on the other side, if you come from any type of Black heritage, they, many people want to impose the idea that if you have any Black heritage, you can't claim anything else. That is only who you are. And so I've fought this constant uphill battle, I think, to really get people to accept what I accept in myself, that I am both of these, I come from both of these heritages, and, they're both equal and they are both completely part of my life. And so that's always been something that's been kind of difficult. And then when I went to college for the first time, it became not only just an issue of people's opinions and stereotypes, it became a structural problem as well. So when I started at college, as they were collecting the demographic information from their students in order to place them within, certain frameworks in the college, they asked for my racial identity. And so I told them that I was both Black and Native American. And the school was like, well, yeah, you can't be both. You have to pick one. And I was like, no, I'm not going to. Why should I? You want me to deny my mother's family or my father's family? Like, why would I do that? And so I fought with them about this, and they decided that since I wouldn't choose one of them, they decided I was going to be nothing. So I got counted as nothing, basically, in their demographic list. And what that meant, though, for me was that I was not connected with the Black communities or the Native communities on campus, because they would send out these email groupings so that people, being on a campus that was predominantly white, it's really important to have those social connections of those different groups. And so since I got left off of, these lists, I had to go and do it myself independently. And so lucky for me, I'm a pretty friendly person. I just started showing up at random places and having to sort of introduce myself to people and, figure out, and once I made friends, getting people to some friends to get me on some of those lists so I wouldn't miss out on events, because I wouldn't know that they were happening because I wouldn't get those messages. And then even when I was in some of these organizations, I still had some of those feelings of not fully belonging in any of those spaces. It was definitely to the point where you had asked Charlene about, are there any tensions about, between different communities. There are sometimes, I have personally experienced some tensions between tribal communities that have federal recognition and ones that do not. So the tribe I come from is recognized by the state, but because of how early we met with the colonizers and the politics of the United States, we do not have federal recognition. But for so many Native people and non-Native people, they have been taught that federal recognition gives you a certain sense of legitimacy and authenticity. And so I had to spend a lot of time really educating people about, breaking down some of those ideas that people thought that they knew about about what recognition means. And so it was, but it was, having to do this as a kid and as a student, as a young adult, and even today, it's still a very difficult thing. But I think it's worth it because, I have been able to educate many different people about that, and it's been, it's been really helpful.
Carol, thank you for mentioning that. I know myself the difference between federal recognition and state recognition. I think most people don't understand that dynamic. I think that's important as well. So thank you for mentioning that. Carol, since we're talking, let me do the final question that we have, one of the final questions that we have. And we talked about all the challenges that you deal with and when you didn't feel welcome. Let's flip the question the other way. And what actions can we take, the audience members as community, to be more inclusive to Native American peoples, to your culture? What can we do to make things better? As Nita mentioned, she's taking it one person at a time, but we have an audience here, and maybe we could exponentially make something happen quicker by letting us know what we can do.
Yes. So, I'm in the world of education. And so I think that there is an opportunity for schools. So whether you are K through 12 or you're a college, please, please incorporate Native stories, Native voices in your curriculum. And it doesn't just have to be in November. We are Native 365 days a year. And while Native American Month is useful and an important tool to make sure that we have some level of visibility, I really challenge all of you educators out there to incorporate Native stories in your curricula. So not just in history class, but think about if you're a literature teacher, for example, include Native authors in your literature stories, and other communities as well. Please include those when you're talking about if you're taking a class on politics in government. Definitely please include Native people in that. Our government systems, and even our like we talked about this concept of recognition. That's something that any student studying American government should know about. And so really just not sort of relegating us to these small niche spaces, but making sure to incorporate us in the general curriculum so that it becomes normalized, that people recognize that we are, in fact, full, real human beings and people, and that we are still here.
Well, as a former and current educator, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Charlene?
So since this is a YMCA conference, I'm going to shamelessly plug my Informing Resource Group. So I am the chair for the Native American Indigenous Resource Group through Y National, and we are just gathering everyone together. So what we are doing is kind of everyone has, not everyone, a lot of people have found out about us. And so they're calling us saying, well, how do we do this? And how do we do this? And how do we do this? So that's good. Because to everyone's point, ask questions, because if we know better, we do better. So we have a group you can join. We did a webinar last month about what is land was basically, and how are we engaging with the Indigenous communities around our YMCAs. So I think that's something that you could do to be appreciative of Native American culture.
Thank you, Charlene. Nina?
I think communities, what they can do to be more inclusive is they have to be open. They have to open up and open their minds. And they have to remember that the erasure of American Indians was planned long before Europeans ever arrived here in North America. And it was intentional, it was methodical, but it was not successful because there are many, many, many Native people who are still here everywhere in North America, whether they are identified as that or not. They are still here. And there is something that you can learn from them. As I said, they have a very, very long history. Their history lasted for millennia. If they didn't know what they were doing, or if they didn't learn anything, they would not have lasted for millennia. But they have been here for thousands of years. So that knowledge should be worth a little something. So try and learn as much as you can about Native people and who they are.
Thank you, Nina. and Kyle.
I would have to piggyback off of Nina. I want them to be open and to ask questions. To ask questions about our heritage, our upbringing, our society. So just ask questions.
And I'm going to ask you one more question, Kyle, and I'll let you start. Part of my culture, my family comes from Italian heritage, and food is central to Italians. But I believe sharing food is one of the best ways to get to know a culture, because it speaks a lot about a people, no matter what your culture is. So to that end, I think there's a lot of misconception about what tribal food is like, Native American food is like. So we're coming up on a harvest celebration next week. So I'm going to just go around the panel and ask, what is your favorite Native food or tribal food? Kyle, I know we talked about that the other day, you and I in your office. Why don't you start us off? Yeah.
My favorite food would be venison. If you're not sure what venison is, just think of deer.
Having grown up in Pennsylvania, deer hunting's a religion, so I know very well what venison is. So thank you very much, Kyle. Carell, how about you? What's your favorite food?
I love succotash, which we'll probably eat with venison. It's a corn and bean soup, and it's very delicious.
I can't imagine when it's made homemade versus like frozen bird's eye succotash in a box, right?
Yeah, no, you definitely you need to have that grandmother making it. There's something she puts in that special secret ingredient that just makes it so much better.
Yeah, microwave doesn't cut it, right?
Not at all.
Period. Nina, how about you? What is your favorite food of your people?
Well, I have two. One is I'm from Kansas, so it's corn. I absolutely love corn. A large part of our life was corn out in the West, and I love it. But I also like potatoes too. So I would have to say corn and potatoes. And I can relate to you as well. I'm sorry, I can relate to you as well, Tim, about food and how food is so important, because most Native gatherings also involve some kind of food, even if you're coming together. And I think I was once talking to my aunt about this, and she said she thought that the reason why food played such an important cultural part was because when the Europeans first came to colonize, the first thing they did was they tried to wipe out all of our food resources. They burnt up all of our stores of corn and beans and other foods, and they tried to wipe out a lot of the foods that we had, and really basically tried to starve us to death and to make us leave. And that period of starvation, I think that Native people never really forgot that. So food became a way of, it was life-giving. And if you had food, you must share it so that we can all survive. And it became something that was very, very important. There's very few Native American gatherings that I've ever attended that don't involve food.
Yeah, and you rarely ever walk away from an Italian dinner not being full. Definitely. Your grandmother makes sure of that. And Charlene, how about you? And then I have some audience questions for the group. So Charlene, your favorite food from your people?
Mine is, and so North Carolina, so it's the South. So it's a collard green sandwich, which you go, what? So it's like corn pone bread, and then collard greens with ham in the middle or pork, whatever it is, and smashed between two pieces of corn pone. It's delicious, greasy, lovely.
There's nothing wrong with that sentence at all. It sounds phenomenal. Okay, some audience questions. So the first question is, and this I'll open up to anyone, they could jump in. Is it okay to buy native creations like beadwork? Is it okay to buy things that are native inspired, like shirts with inspired prints on them? Who wants to take that one? Charlene, I can't see. Is your hand up? No? Anybody want to take that?
I can take that.
Go ahead, Carol.
So it is okay to buy native made creations like beadwork. Several of us, you can see we're buying, we're rocking some of our native bling earrings and such. Charlene's got hers as well, her very blingy ones, gorgeous. And these are items that are made by native artists, and they're often sold. Some people have a presence online, and then others you can buy their items if you go to a powwow or other native celebration event. And this is a great way to be able to be part of and join in and wear something from that is native made. Now, when we're talking about native inspired, that is, you usually have some big corporation who has taken a look and tried to take something from a community. And so that's very extractive, and that is not something that we condone. And so buy from native artists, but not from, big corporations who are looking to just do, native style prints, because there's nothing authentic about that. But when you buy from a native artist, not only are you getting something that's made with love and care and sincerity, but you're also supporting them economically and supporting native businesses and helping them to support their own families.
That's a great response. Thank you. Another audience question. Can any of you speak the languages of your tribes? It's a multi-part question. So let me do that one first. Can anyone speak your native language?
So I'll take that one.
Right.
I think I referenced before that my tribe has been in contact with colonizers for over 500 years. So in that time, our language was lost. So our native language currently is English. So there is no native language left for the Lumbee people.
I will also say Nanticoke was a sleeping language, and which means it hasn't been spoken since the mid-1850s. However, today we are bringing that language back, and we're really working to bring it back to the voices of our people. So using old archive documents and leaning on that language family, so the related languages that are still spoken by people. So we are bringing that language back.
Actually, there's a question here that's certainly close to my heart as a former educator. Are young people in tribes being taught traditional languages? Is that part of, and I want to say curriculum, but is that part of what's taught in perhaps schools that are specifically Native American, for Native American students? Do any of you know that? Nina? I saw you shaking your head. Did you want to answer that?
Yes, in some communities they are. I know the Dene have a program that they are working on with their youth, and they're putting it in the school, and they have been for a few years to try and have more and more native speakers. That's one success story, but I'm sure there are many others. I'm sure that Lakota are probably doing something very similar to that, to try and keep their language alive. Our language is gone. I said our language was gone, and there is nobody left to reconstruct it, because as I said, I'm from Kansas, so people who were speaking their language were often killed, on site, because there was a bounty. So, there just are none left. I think the last fluent speaker was my great-grandmother amongst my people, and she's gone. And the language, we don't have enough of it to even try and revitalize that. And that was probably in the 1880s, 90s. She lived to the 20th century, but in the 20th century. So she was one of the last ones that was this speaker.
Thank you, Nina. We have very limited time left, but there's one more question I'll get to. I'll combine two together. Some of the audience members are asking what your thoughts are when places, buildings, sports teams are named after Native Americans or Native American tribes. Along the same vein, we just had Halloween a short time ago. If when people dress up as a Native American for Halloween, how does that make you feel as a Native American? So anybody want to take that last sort of combined question?
Man, I'll jump in. So it's not okay to, our culture is not your costume. So they can just check that one. That one's easy. And buildings and places and buildings across the nation being named Native. I think that would depend on the relationship with the community who it's named after. But for example, Redskins is a dead Native American. So that would be not nice. But depending on the relationship that the tribe nation band has with the building or whatever is named after it, I think that would be between that people and that building that's being named after them, or camp or what have you. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add to that.
Any final thoughts on that before I close out our discussion? Okay, let me begin to wrap things up by first of all thanking our guests for their time and their commitment to supporting and educating RY. We believe that all people, no matter what their backgrounds, culture, and heritage, all deserve to be treated with dignity, compassion, and respect. At the YMCA of Delaware, we're all welcome and belong. I know personally, I want to thank the four of you. I really enjoyed this discussion. I learned every time I talk, and this is our second time together. Every single time I speak to you, I learn something else, and it's great. And thank you for your candor and your openness, and really helping to educate our community. It means a great deal. And I'll end by saying that I'm so proud that you're so proud of your heritage. Never lose that. I'm very happy that you feel that way. Thank you.